Welcome. Today we are talking about finances, which is great because we're talking to Kim Hartman, who's you're a wealth advisor. Is that your official title?
I'm a certified financial planner.
Okay. Certified financial planner. And it's really fun to talk to Kim about relationships and money. If you want to hear a little background on Kim, you can go to episode 17 when she talks about her domestic abuse relationship, where the title of that is, Am I Depressed or is it the relationship? And then also there's a podcast about boundaries, and that's a really good one too. Today, we're going to talk about finances. And I'm going to start with a fun one. Is it the latte? Is it the latte that's skipping out on is going to make us rich? Is it the latte?
I hope not.
I hope not too, but you hear this a lot. So let's talk about it.
Yeah, I don't think it's the latte. It's not the latte, right? It's not. So, I think that whenever maybe this is the wrong direction to go, but I think that it's easy to point to these little indulgences, right? Because we have this background of like, okay, we have our wants, and it's not okay to spend on wants, right? It's just you got to feel some kind of icky shame about it. And then we have our needs, and it's okay to spend on needs to a point, right? So, my example has often been, well, you need a toothbrush, right? You need a toothbrush. That's a need. But is like the fancy Sonicare, is that a need? If my dentist tells me it is, then I guess I don't have to feel shame about it. But if they don't, then I guess I'll feel shame about it. And so there's this weird thing that we do where we have basically what's discretionary spending and what's kind of our committed non-discretionary spending. And we just have this rolling guilt and shame around how we're spending our money on things we don't need, right? So I think that's where the latte thing comes, right? I just read something recently where if we don't spend $1,370 a day, you'll have $5,000 in a year. I haven't even for sure done the math on that. I don't know if there's like compounding involved in that, but you know what's behind it. It's your coffee and your scone, right? That you get to like reward yourself for going to work, Like that's what they're saying. That message is everywhere.
Mm-hmm. And it's not one thing I really like talking to you about, talking about wealth, because I did a podcast on wealth. This is so important. It's not about the thing or how much. What is it really? Tell me more. What is it about?
Yeah, I personally think it's living in alignment with your values. That is, and that's tricky, right? Because some of our values are really future oriented. They're down the road quite a ways. And some of them, are more present oriented. And so, and I think that every time you spend money, you're trying to meet a need, right? I just take the wants out of it because who really gives a damn? So I assume you're trying to meet a need with that money. What is it? It could be emotional, right? And so it might not be easy to dig out. It might not be the need to have clean teeth, right? It might be the need to feel a social connection. It might be a need to feel generous. It might be a need for just something very intangible, right? But what happens is some of our needs for social connection might conflict with our needs for security, like down the road. And then we're spending maybe to get a coffee to feel this little like boost, like, okay, life is worth living. Like it's not all just, I'm not a robot. I'm not an automaton here just to meet everyone else's needs. I'm going to go and indulge a little bit to remind myself I'm a human being, and also maybe to contribute to the local economy or to say hi to like the local coffee barista or whatever it is, right? Sometimes it's really hard to know what need we're meeting. And then I kind of lost my train of thought. But then we also need like the ability to say and connect with those future oriented needs, which might be easier to identify because we have financial advisors telling us all the time what our future financial needs are. And so but they're in the future. So we're not that connected with them. So we're not connected to our present day needs because they might be emotional, and we're not connected to our future needs because they're far away. And so we're just out of alignment. So we might be putting 30%, 50%, 80% of our money into today and not enough into the future. And so I think it's just a matter of finding ways, find out where there's conflicts, and then identifying how to resolve those.
And figuring out what, like you said, what's at the core of your needs.
Yeah.
Of that.
Yep.
So
yeah,
that's really good. Especially then because you get into couples. I feel like I've heard that the biggest reason for divorce or whatever is finances. And as we're kind of alluding to, there's a lot more to it. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, let's. So let's do like recreation as an example, because it's a little bit more fun. So like how much we spend on recreation. So I'll have a couple come in and somebody will, let's say golfing. It's very stereotypical, that the guy goes golfing a lot. And there's money being spent on that. And then maybe one of the things that used to come up, scrapbooking is not as much of a thing as it used to be, but it used to be a thing, and there would be lots of supplies required, right? And so I can remember sitting in a room with a couple kind of fighting over, well, they're trying to come up with a budget, and then their conflict over how much so-and-so is spending on this and how much so-and-so is spending on this, right? Or one time it was, and it's their hobbies. And then another time it was like one side of the couple wants to do DoorDash, right? Because they just had a baby and they're both working. They went back to, she went back to work. And so they're doing DoorDash, and a lot of their money's going towards that. And the other party wants to save more, and because not for something really specific, just they feel like they should be saving more. And so there's this conflict over values and what's important. And instead of having a conversation over, okay, well, honey, like we're spending a lot of money on golfing or on this hobby. What do you enjoy about it? How is that meeting your needs? Like, what values does that align with for you? And is there a way that we can maybe meet that need? Because it's totally valid. It's completely valid without spending, quite as much money. How could we do that? Let's brainstorm. Instead, it's that need, not valid. You need to knock it off because you're ruining our financial security. Right? And so then we get into this conflicts over whether needs are valid, whether it's a want or a need, right?
Yeah. And as we talked about, like, just get rid of wants and needs and try to understand like what the value is. What is it doing for that person? What is it adding? And respecting each other's what's important.
Yeah, exactly. And then finding a different way to do that. Sometimes it's one of the things that has come up is generosity, right? Because that's a hard one to really invalidate when somebody wants to feel generous, like at Christmas, or you go out to dinner with your family and they always want to pick up the tab for the whole family, right? And it's really, and it's really hard for a partner to be like, you gotta like, not, like maybe pull back on that because we need to be maybe putting some money away for whatever else we value. It's like, well, but I'm just being generous, right? Like how do you say?
Mike and I had this conversation today. As far as like generosity being like a way to meet a need, but yet it's hurting what he really wants.
Mm-hmm.
But still wanting to, just to sort that out.
Yeah. Right. And so I can remember brainstorming with a client, because she liked to do really elaborate birthday activities for her friends, like that was part of her identity almost. And that's another thing that I think we forget about money. And it obviously comes up in couples, is that the way that we spend, the way we consume is actually, it's not a habit. It's not just that simple. It's part of our identity. The way that we consume, buy things, get rid of things, that whole consumption, cycle, that's part of our identity. And so she would do these elaborate like birthday events. And it was part of who she was as a person. So I couldn't just be like, you can't just be stop buying the latte or stop throwing these birthday parties for your friends. It's like, why how can you, how can you maintain that? Do you want to maintain that piece of your identity? Is it actually meeting a need that you really value? Right. What do you value most? How can we be more intentional about consuming in a way that supports who you want to be as a person? Right. Like,
instead of auto overgiving or auto
right.
doing this, really checking to see if you're in alignment.
Yeah. And so it's so much deeper than that. And I'm really not a big fan of being like, you just need to stop spending, like stop buying books, stop going to get massages, stop buying the latte, stop the avocado toast or whatever that one was. It's like, let's identify what you value the most and let's take the shame out of it. Truly. And I think as couples, that's it. It's like, what does money mean to us as a couple? What does it mean to us? What do we want to do with it? Right. And sort of having like maybe not like a vision board, but like a value statement around money as a unit. Right.
Yes. Well, I think having a value statement about your relationship,
Yeah.
have money and this and that, and have like very clear agreements as far as like, Mike and I really try to respect each other's values and want to support each other's values. And so we're not going to label like, oh gosh, no, that's not, because that doesn't align with me, and just trying to make room for both of our individuality and figure out our goals as a couple and the values that are important to us.
Yeah. So then as the decisions come up, is that in alignment with the values that we've stated as a couple? It makes those decisions a little bit more clearer, I think.
And not so judgmental.
Yeah.
Like, oh my goodness, I can't believe you just spent and those are not like.
And what you're really saying in that moment is we're not in alignment in our values, right? Which is probably not true, right? Because if you sat down and determined you are in alignment, it's actually just, there's a conflict there between them. So there are always ways to meet needs without necessarily spending money to do so, right? There always are. Yeah. Yeah. Because it's a scarce resource.
Yeah. Our emotional cups can get full without us really even being aware of it. But when our emotional cups get full, we can react rather than respond. We can be fatigued. We can feel burdened. We have struggle with sleep. We can have physical symptoms. And that's why I have the free Barf Notebook page for you. And it's a simple process done regularly where you're barfing out your thoughts, sorting them out, and planning them out. And it's a wealth of healing in that. So go ahead and check the link and have access to that free Barf Notebook process. Live brighter every day. So when it comes to like financial planning and all of that, what is needed to build wealth?
Oh, wow. That's a great question. I think that a certain amount of future orientation is important, right? You've got to get close to those goals that are far away, right? And so those sometimes I think require projections so that you can kind of start. It's so hard to conceptualize a bunch of variables in your head, even if you're good with spreadsheets. And you can like do a bit of a projection on a spreadsheet. I think it's really important to have someone who's got the fancy software and stuff to do that for you to a degree so that you can constantly have that check-in, on an annual basis, at least being like, okay, how do my future goals look? Am I still on track? Right? Because that brings them really close to us and to our everyday decision making. And I think when we can align with that piece, then we know exactly what we need to do today. And it's not that hard then to give up the latte, so to speak, or to scale back on spending on our recreational activities, so that we can maybe go on a bigger trip with our family. Like we just need to kind of bring it all and gather those things close to us so that they're all in the same place instead of some being over here and some being over here.
Yeah, that makes sense. Because I know there's like different schools of thoughts where some people will just basically starve living right now and put it all for the future. And then when they get to the future, they literally don't know how to live, or their health is so poor that they can't really enjoy it. And then there's the balance of living life today and really getting in, doing our healing, nurturing, and really experiencing life, and looking at the future and what, we want our lives to look like.
Yeah. Yeah. And you want both to have equal representation kind of at the table, right?
Yes.
When you're making
Yes.
decisions. Yeah.
What about the spender saver, I guess the categories or whatever? Like, what are
Yeah.
you thinking that?
So I'm kind of less interested in those categories than the why, like the motivation behind it, right? Like, and so, and we call those like money scripts or money narratives or whatever. It's like, and it's like, are you connected with the reasons why that's so important to you, right? And, we have people that are more future oriented, that are savers, so to speak, or more vigilant, money vigilant, right? And then we have people that really, some of their self-worth is tied to the way that they consume and the outward appearance. And there's a certain amount of security that comes from feeling that you're presenting a certain appearance, right? And again, it's like, let's just call it all equally valid. Let's just call it valid, right? Yeah. Because that's the starting point. And then let's talk about whether that's really in alignment with the things that matter most to you. Because sometimes we do things out of habit, right? We learn something as a kid. That we learn that money is scarce. So holding on to it, or money doesn't stick around if you hold on to it, right? So even if you save it, it's just going to disappear and you don't trust yourself with it. So it would make perfect sense that somebody would, when they get, some money, they spend, it's gone just as fast as it comes in, right? Because they don't trust themselves with it. And they haven't been able to see how it can grow and work for them. And so I think you gotta meet people where they're at. As a professional, it's so much easier than it is to do in relationship. I think. And I think it takes a long time to kind of unpeel these layers for everybody to work through. And I think having those automatic narratives really help us make decisions in a day-to-day life quicker, right? And so there's a benefit to having them. And so I think that financial intimacy takes a long time to build. And this idea that when you get together, you should just have that is kind of crazy.
Yes, I agree. But again, you're talking about like unpacking the motives or the values and unpacking some of those things, because you're right. We do autopilot, and then we give it a value like, oh, I'm a saver. And so that's just way better.
I'm so much better than you.
Yeah. But it could be a scarcity mentality. Like,
yeah. Right.
so.
Yeah, it could. And it also just like financial acumen, right? Like it's the financial system is a system, and it's not easy to navigate, just like our legal system or medical system. And so, one area that I've seen is, and you might agree with this or not, but entrepreneurs sometimes are so busy building that developing, learning about like small employer retirement, plans is that's so far down on your list of things to do that it's not really about just like it's just that who has time to know it all, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes. So I think building just 1%, like the knowledge and information is huge. And how like can a SEP help a person, and how can a Roth help a person? And it's nice because I'm training my kids all about that. But I'll tell you, I just started learning about this like 7 years ago. And honestly, finances, I'd be like, or financial or investing or wealth, like I had a whole sorts of stuff. And I still like, even, looking at my numbers and knowing things like that is difficult. Like it's work for me to get comfortable with something that I normally would be like, no, that's just, not my thing, or I'm not good at it or whatever.
Yeah. I mean, and that's the truth too, is that we often specialize in relationships because it's efficient, right? And so somebody might be good at it and then somebody's not good at it, right? And then the longer you go, the further you get, away from it. And so you're right. I love that. Your idea of 1% at a time, just continuing to like dig one more layer into it. Yeah. And you're very good about asking for education too.
I do. I'm like, I know that I don't know. So I'm happy to learn. So if somebody wanted to develop like more financial acumen, just know more, what would be some good resources?
Oh gosh, honestly, I feel like, well, first, I feel like talking to people who love anybody who's passionate about a topic is my favorite resource, right? To go to, because so that's my first thing. If you can find somebody passionate about it, just corner them, right? And they're going to love it or hate it, but either way, is a good one. And then personally, there's a book called, I have it on my shelf, One Page Financial Plan. I really like that book, because it just breaks things down. It's not that complicated. Our financial system is complicated, but the principles of finance just really aren't. And it adds enough psychology with enough of money, with enough, of the sort of science of it. Right. And then I really love the book, The Psychology of Money. I think it's Housel is the author, is one of my favorite books that's out there. So that's where I would start.
That's wonderful. What about for couples trying to get on, be able to talk good ones, or is there one specific that would be good for?
I still actually like both of those. And there are books out there for couples and money. And I say, use what works. If it causes you any kind of stress in your body, don't use it. It's not worth it. Right. Yeah. And then I think it's conversations. So instead of having that reaction of that defensive, this has to stop. That really comes from fear. If you keep doing that, we're going to end up eating cat food forever. Right. Just to step back and be curious. Right. Just be curious, which is what I think we all want, honestly, in relationship, and trying to figure out where it's coming from and whether or not that serves your guys' values as a couple.
Oh, that's amazing. Yeah. Thank you so much, Kim. I so appreciate you.
My pleasure. I appreciate you too. Thank you for inviting me.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Stay tuned for our next episode.